The great crystal hall sparkled with 1,000 different lights as beings from across the galaxy gathered for the most important meeting in centuries. Princess Nala stood tall on her shimmering throne, her pale blue skin glowing softly like moonlight on water. She was speaking about peace between worlds when it happened. One moment she was gesturing gracefully with her long, elegant arms. The next moment, she stumbled forward, clutching her chest. A sharp gasp echoed through the massive chamber as she fell to her knees. Silver blood began spreading across the white marble floor like spilled mercury. Ambassador Jun felt his heart stop. He had only been representing Earth for 6 months, and this was his first grand assembly. The young Korean diplomat had studied alien customs for years, but nothing prepared him for this moment. All around him, creatures that looked like walking trees froze in place. Bird-like beings with golden feathers stopped mid-conversation. Even the massive rock people, who usually moved like slow mountains, became completely still. 40 different species filled the hall, yet nobody moved to help. June looked at the princess. Her silver blood was spreading faster now, and her breathing was getting weaker. Her beautiful face was turning pale, and the soft glow under her skin was fading like a dying light bulb. "Someone help her!" June shouted, but his voice seemed tiny in the enormous hall. The closest delegate was a tall, thin creature with 4 arms and wise-looking eyes. "We cannot," it whispered in perfect English. "The ancient laws forbid touching royal blood. It has been this way for 3,000 years. June stared in disbelief. "But she's dying." A furry creature that looked like a giant cat nodded sadly. "The sacred protocols must be followed. Only her own people may touch her, and they are not here." Princess Nala's breathing became more shallow. Her eyes found June's across the crowd, and he saw something that broke his heart. She wasn't just dying from her wounds. She was dying from loneliness, surrounded by hundreds of beings who were too afraid of old rules to save her life. The princess tried to speak, but only managed a weak whisper. June pushed closer through the crowd, ignoring the angry looks from other delegates. "Where are her doctors?" he demanded. "They are on their home world," replied a blue creature with tentacles for arms. "It would take days to bring them here through space." "What about your doctors?" June pointed at the bird-like beings. "Everyone knows your people are the best healers in the galaxy." The golden-feathered leader shook its head slowly. "Our healing. Laws are clear. We cannot touch royal blood from another species. The punishment would be exile from our world forever." June felt anger building in his chest. These weren't primitive beings. They had technology that could travel between stars. They had medicine that could cure diseases humans had never even heard of. Yet they were letting someone die because of rules written thousands of years ago. Princess Nala's silver blood had now formed a small pool around her. Her glowing skin was becoming dimmer by the second. In maybe 5 minutes, she would be dead, and hundreds of the galaxy's smartest beings would have watched it happen without lifting a finger. June looked around one more time, hoping someone would step forward. Nobody did. They all stood like statues, trapped by their own ancient fears and traditions. That's when he made his decision. June didn't think about the consequences. He just ran. His black dress shoes slipped slightly on the smooth marble as he rushed toward Princess Nala. Behind him, voices erupted in panic and anger. The tall, four-armed delegate shouted something in a language that sounded like wind chimes. The bird-like creatures started flapping their golden wings in distress. "Stop!" "Him!" screamed a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "He cannot touch her!" But June was already kneeling beside the princess. Up close, he could see that her silver blood wasn't like human blood at all. It sparkled like liquid starlight and felt warm against his hands. Her breathing was so shallow, he could barely see her chest moving. "I'm sorry," he whispered to her, though he wasn't sure she could hear him. "I don't know your customs, but I won't let you die." June pressed his hands firmly against the largest wound on her side. The princess's blood immediately began flowing through his fingers, but he didn't let go. He had learned basic first aid. In college, nothing fancy, but he knew that stopping bleeding was the most important thing. The crowd around them had grown louder and more frightened. A group of creatures that looked like walking crystals were making high-pitched ringing sounds. that hurt his ears. Some of the furry cat-like beings were backing away as if they were watching something terrible happen. "You fool!" shouted a new voice. June looked up to see 3 guards in silver armor rushing toward him. They weren't human, but they looked almost human, except for their bright purple skin and eyes that glowed like small suns. "Release the princess immediately!" "She's bleeding to death," June yelled back, not moving his hands. "If I let go, she'll die in 2 minutes." The lead guard pulled out what looked like a weapon, but it was unlike anything June had ever seen. It glowed with blue energy and hummed like an angry bee. "You have violated the sacred touch laws. The punishment is immediate death. Then kill me after I save her life." Princess Nala stirred slightly under his hands. Her eyelids fluttered open, and for a moment her glowing eyes met his. She looked confused and weak, but alive. That was all that mattered to June. The crowd was getting more agitated by the second. Creatures were shouting in dozens of different languages, creating a noise like a zoo at feeding time. Some were calling for his arrest. Others were demanding he be removed from the planet immediately. But something strange was happening. The princess's bleeding was slowing down. Her skin was starting to glow a little brighter. Whatever healing abilities her people had, they seemed to be working better now that the blood loss had stopped. "Look!" June called out to the crowd. "She's getting better." The purple-skinned guard captain lowered his weapon slightly, his glowing eyes wide with surprise. "How is this possible? Human touch should poison royal blood." "Maybe your old books got it wrong," June said, keeping pressure on the wound even, though it had almost stopped bleeding completely. "Maybe helping someone isn't always dangerous," a voice from the crowd called out. "But the sacred protocols clearly state that foreign touch brings death to royalty." Princess Nala's voice was weak but clear when she finally spoke. "The sacred protocols," she whispered, "were written by people who never met a human." The hall fell silent, except for the sound of June's heart beating so fast he thought everyone could hear it. The medical ward smelled like flowers and electricity. Princess Nala opened her eyes slowly, feeling like she was waking up from the deepest sleep of her life. The ceiling above her was made of some kind of glowing crystal that pulsed gently like a heartbeat. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was or what had happened. Then she saw him. The human was sitting in a chair beside her bed, his head resting on his arms like he had fallen asleep watching over her. His black hair was messy, and his formal clothes were wrinkled and stained with her silver blood. Even sleeping, he looked worried. "You stayed," she whispered, her voice still weak. June's head shot up immediately. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but they lit up when he saw her awake. "Princess, how do you feel?" She tried to sit up but felt dizzy. "Like I was hit by a flying transport." She looked at him more carefully. "You're the one who touched me, who saved me." June nodded, suddenly looking nervous. "I'm sorry if I did something wrong. I just couldn't watch you die." "Wrong?" Princess Nala stared at him in amazement. "You saved my life while everyone else stood there like statues. How could that be wrong?" "Well, according to about 50 different aliens who've been yelling outside this room, I broke some pretty serious laws." June tried to smile, but she could see he was scared. Something about sacred touch laws and ancient punishments. Princess Nala was quiet for a long moment, thinking. "Tell me about your people," she said finally. "About humans. Why did you help me when no one else would?" June shifted in his chair, trying to find the right words. "Where I come from, we have a simple rule. If someone needs help and you can help them, you help them. It doesn't matter who they are or what some old book says about it." "That's it? No ancient laws, no sacred protocols?" "We have laws," June explained, "but they're mostly about not hurting people, not about avoiding helping them. If I saw someone bleeding on the street back on Earth, and I just stood there because some rule said I couldn't touch them, people would think I was crazy." The princess was quiet again, her glowing eyes distant. "Do you know how old the sacred touch laws are?" "Someone mentioned 3,000 years. 3,047 years, she said softly. "Written when my people first met other species. Everyone was afraid of everyone else. They made rules to keep us apart, to prevent wars and misunderstandings." June waited for her to continue. "But those rules—" Her voice got stronger, more angry. Those rules almost killed me yesterday. My own people, who I've spent my whole life serving, couldn't touch me because some ancient king was afraid of getting sick from alien contact. Maybe the rules made sense back then, June said carefully. Maybe they did, but I'm not living 3,000 years ago. I'm living now. She looked directly at him. And yesterday, the only person in that entire hall who cared more about my life than about following old rules was someone whose planet wasn't even discovered when those laws were written. June didn't know what to say to that. What does that tell you about my people? Princess Nala asked. What does that tell you about this whole galaxy we've built? Before June could answer, the door to the medical ward slid open with a soft whoosh. 3 figures in official robes walked in, their faces serious and unfriendly. Ambassador June, the tallest one said in a voice like ice, you need to come with us. Now. The council chamber looked like a courtroom designed by aliens who had never seen a human courtroom. Seats floated in mid-air at different heights, creating a spiral that went up to the crystal ceiling. Creatures of every shape and size filled these floating chairs, all staring down at June like he was some kind of dangerous animal. Ambassador Hana sat in the human section, her face calm but her hands gripped tightly in her lap. She had been Earth's top diplomat for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for this mess. Her assistant June, barely 6 months on the job, had managed to create the biggest diplomatic crisis in human history. The charges are clear, announced Chief Justice Corval, a being that looked like a tree made of silver metal. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. Ambassador June of Earth violated the sacred touch laws, committed assault upon royal person, and showed complete disregard for galactic law. A murmur went through the crowd. June stood in the center of the chamber, feeling very small and very human. The translator device in his ear was working overtime as dozens of species whispered to each other in languages that sounded like music, static, and breaking glass. The penalty, Justice Corval continued, is exile from all civilized worlds and imprisonment for no less than 50 standard years. Ambassador Hana stood up. With respect, Chief Justice, my government requests permission to speak in defense of our representative. Granted, Corval said. Though he didn't sound happy about it, Hana walked to the center of the chamber, her heels clicking on the crystal floor. She looked up at the floating seats filled with alien faces. Honored delegates. My colleague saved a life. In human culture, that is not a crime. That is the highest good. A creature that looked like a giant butterfly with too many eyes fluttered its wings angrily. Human culture is irrelevant. The sacred laws apply to all species within galactic space. Laws written before humans existed, Hana replied smoothly. Laws that assume contact between species causes harm. But Ambassador June's contact with Princess Nala caused healing, not harm. The outcome doesn't matter, screeched a bird-like delegate. The law is the law. Before Hana could respond, the great doors at the back of the chamber opened with a sound like wind chimes. Everyone turned to see Princess Nala walking in, moving slowly but steadily. She wore simple white robes that made her skin glow like captured starlight. The chamber fell silent. Royal protocol demanded that everyone stand when she entered, but some of the delegates looked confused about whether they were supposed to honor her or arrest her defender. Princess Nala, Justice Corval said carefully, you should not be here. This is a legal proceeding. It's a legal proceeding about someone who saved my life, she replied, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. I think that makes it my business. She walked to stand beside June, which caused several delegates to gasp. Royal protocol forbade her from associating with criminals, but she ignored the shocked whispers. I invoke my right as Crown Princess of the Crystal Dominion to speak in defense of this human, she announced. Justice Corval's silver branches rustled with what might have been nervousness. Princess, that right hasn't been used in over 2,000 years. Then it's about time, she said firmly. Ambassador Hana felt her heart racing. This was unprecedented. If Princess Nala officially defended June, it would create a political alliance between Earth and the Crystal Dominion. That kind of alliance could shift the balance of power in the entire galaxy, but it would also make both humans and the Crystal Dominion enemies of every species, that wanted the old laws to stay in place. The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates realized what was happening. The explosion happened at exactly 3:47 in the morning, Galactic Standard Time. Joan woke up to the sound of his window shattering and alarms screaming through the diplomatic quarters. Pieces of crystal glass scattered across his bed like deadly confetti. Security Chief Kang was at his door within minutes, her face grim under her black hair. She had been Earth's head of security for the galactic mission for 3 years, and she had never seen anything like this. "Pack your things," she told June, scanning the damaged room with a device that beeped angrily. "We're moving you to a safe location." "What happened?" June asked, pulling on his clothes while stepping carefully around the broken glass. "Someone planted a small bomb in the building's ventilation system. If you had been sleeping 3 feet closer to the window, you'd be dead right now." Kang's voice was calm, but her hands were shaking slightly. "This wasn't an accident." 2 hours later, similar alarms went off in the Royal District. Princess Nala's personal transport had mysteriously lost power while flying over the deepest part of the city's canyon. Only her pilot's quick thinking had prevented a crash that would have looked completely accidental. Kang met with Princess Nala's security team the next morning in a room that was swept for listening devices 3 times. The princess looked tired but angry, while June just looked confused. "Someone is trying to kill both of you," Kang said bluntly. "The question is why?" "Because I broke their precious laws?" June suggested. "No," Princess Nala said slowly. "The council was angry, but they're politicians, not murderers. This is something else." Security Chief Kang pulled out a small data pad and showed them a series of images. "I've been investigating the original attack on you, Princess, the one in the Grand Assembly." The images showed the great crystal hall from different angles, captured by security cameras. Kang pointed to several spots in the crowd. "Look at these. 3 individuals. They're positioned perfectly to block any quick path to you if someone had tried to help. And this one here," she zoomed in on a creature that looked like a walking tree. "He was carrying medical supplies but never moved to use them." Princess Nala leaned forward, studying the images. "You're saying the attack was planned?" "I'm saying everything was planned. The attack, the positioning of certain delegates, even the timing." Kang's voice got harder. "Someone wanted you dead, and they arranged for all the most helpful species to be blocked or bound by protocol." June felt a chill run down his spine. "The sacred touch laws." "Exactly," Kang nodded. "Think about it. Those laws were perfect for this plan. They guaranteed that even if someone wanted to help you, they wouldn't be allowed to. The only thing the attackers didn't count on was someone who didn't know the laws." "A human," Princess Nala whispered. "A human who had no idea he was supposed to let you die." The room was quiet for a moment as they all realized what this meant. "So now they're trying to clean up loose ends," Princess Nala said. "Kill me to finish the job and kill June because he saw too much and ruined their plan." Kang nodded grimly. "But here's the really scary part. Whoever did this has access to high-level security information. They knew exactly where you'd be sitting. June's room number, the princess's travel schedule. This isn't some random group of criminals. You're talking about someone in the government," June said, the reality hitting him like a cold wave. "I'm talking about someone very powerful who benefits from the old ways staying exactly as they are." Kang looked at both of them seriously. "Someone who sees your alliance as a threat to everything they've built their power on." "What do we do?" Princess Nala asked. "We find them before they find us." The secret meeting took place in the abandoned section of the space station, where old maintenance tunnels twisted like a maze beneath the shining diplomatic halls. Princess Nala had changed out of her royal robes into simple grey clothes that made her look like any other station worker. June wore a maintenance uniform that Security Chief Kang had borrowed from the human technical crew. "This feels like a spy movie," June whispered as they crawled through a narrow tunnel that smelled like oil and recycled air. "What's a spy movie?" Princess Nala asked, genuinely curious. "I'll explain later. Right now, let's focus on not getting killed." They emerged into a forgotten computer room, filled with old data storage units that hummed quietly in the darkness. Kang was already there, surrounded by holographic displays that showed information flowing like waterfalls of light. "I found something," she said without looking up from her work. Princess, do you remember proposing the law reform initiative 6 months ago? Princess Nala nodded. I wanted to update some of the oldest galactic laws, things like the Sacred Touch laws, the Species Separation Protocols, the Trade Restriction Acts. Most of them were written thousands of years ago and don't make sense anymore. Exactly, and do you remember who opposed it most strongly? Kang waved her hand and the holographic display changed to show the voting records from the Galactic Council. Names and species appeared in red and green columns, showing who had supported the princess's reforms and who had fought against them. The Elder Coalition, Princess Nala said, reading the names. The Vex Supremacy, the Ancient Order of Corval, the First Speakers Alliance, all the oldest, most powerful species in the galaxy. June studied the display. These are the same species that have the most to lose if the old laws change, right? Right, Kang confirmed. Under the current system, these elder species have special privileges. They get the best trade deals, the most votes in council decisions, and the highest positions in galactic government, all because they were the first to join the Alliance thousands of years ago. She changed the display again, showing financial records that made June's head spin. But here's where it gets interesting. 3 weeks before the attack on Princess Nala, someone transferred huge amounts of money to hire mercenaries, buy weapons, and bribe security guards. Who? Princess Nala demanded. That's the problem. The payments were made through shell companies and fake accounts, but I traced the money backward, and it all leads to the same place. Kang pointed to a name on the screen. The Elder Coalition's Emergency Fund. June felt his stomach drop. They tried to kill you to stop your reforms? Princess Nala was staring at the display with a mix of anger and sadness. It makes perfect sense. If I had died during the Grand Assembly, it would have looked like an accident or a random attack. My reforms would have died with me and everything would have stayed the same. But you lived, Kang continued, thanks to June. So now they have 2 problems. First, you're still alive and still pushing for changes. Second, you and June have created an alliance between humans and royalty, which is exactly the kind of thing that threatens their power structure. So they decided to kill us both, June said. Exactly, make it look like accidents, blame it on extremists, and use the crisis to make the old laws even stricter. Princess Nala stood up, her eyes glowing brighter with anger. They used our own sacred laws as weapons against us. They counted on everyone being too afraid to help me, too bound by tradition to act. The question is, Kang said, what do we do about it? We have evidence, but these are some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Accusing them directly could start a war. June looked at both women, thinking about everything that had happened. Or, he said slowly, it could start a revolution. The warning came too late. Kang's voice crackled through their communicators, just as the door to the computer room exploded inward. They found you! Get out now! June grabbed Princess Nala's hand and pulled her toward the emergency exit, as 3 figures in black armor poured into the room. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy, casting eerie blue light on the walls. This way, June shouted, leading her into the maintenance tunnels. Behind them, he could hear the assassins destroying the computer equipment, erasing all the evidence they had worked so hard to gather. The tunnels were a maze of pipes and cables that twisted through the station's belly like metal intestines. Princess Nala had never been in such a cramped, dirty place in her entire royal life, but she kept up with June as they crawled, climbed, and squeezed through spaces barely wide enough for a human. "Where are we going?" she whispered as they paused. "At a junction where 5 tunnels met." "I have no idea," June admitted, checking his small handheld map. "But they're behind us, so anywhere else is better." The sound of boots on metal echoed through the tunnels, getting closer. Their pursuers had split up and were coming from multiple directions. "Can you fight?" June asked the princess. "I had royal combat training," she said, "but that was mostly ceremonial swordwork and formal dueling, not hiding in tunnels like a space rat." "Well, I had no combat training at all," June said with a nervous laugh. "So we're both learning as we go." They crawled through a particularly narrow section that led to the station's water recycling plant. The air here was humid and filled with the sound of rushing liquid. Huge pipes carried water and waste between different levels of the station. Up there, Princess Nala pointed to a maintenance walkway that crossed above the main treatment tanks. We can see where they're coming from. They climbed a ladder that was slippery with condensation. June's hands were shaking, but he tried to stay calm. Back on Earth, the most dangerous thing he had ever faced was a difficult exam or a challenging presentation. Now he was running for his life through an alien space station with a princess whose people's enemies wanted them both dead. "June," Princess Nala said as they reached the walkway. "Why are you doing this?" "What do you mean?" "You could have gone back to Earth after saving my life. Your government probably would have transferred you somewhere safe, but you stayed to help me fight this conspiracy." "Why?" June thought about it as they moved carefully along the narrow walkway. Below them, recycled water rushed through transparent tubes like liquid lightning. "Back on Earth, we have a saying," he said finally. "If you see something wrong and you don't try to fix it, then you're part of the problem. What these elder species are doing isn't just wrong for you and me, it's wrong for everyone. Even if it gets you killed. My grandfather fought in a war before I was born. He always told me that some things are worth fighting for, even if the fight is scary." June helped, her step over a gap in the walkway. "Freedom is one of those things. The right to help people is one of those things." A laser blast suddenly scorched the metal beside June's head. The assassins had found them. "Run!" he yelled. But Princess Nala didn't run. Instead, she did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She picked up a piece of broken pipe and threw it with perfect accuracy at the nearest assassin's weapon, knocking it from his hands. "Royal combat training," she explained to June's amazed expression. "Turns out it's more useful than I thought." They ran together through the maze of walkways and pipes, two unlikely partners fighting not just for their lives, but for the chance to change a galaxy. The warning came too late. Kang's voice crackled through their communicators, just as the door to the computer room exploded inward. "They found you, get out now." June grabbed Princess Nala's hand and pulled her toward the emergency exit as three figures in black armor poured into the room. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy, casting eerie blue light on the walls. "This way!" June shouted, leading her into the maintenance tunnels. Behind them, he could hear the assassins destroying the computer equipment, erasing all the evidence they had worked so hard to gather. The tunnels were a maze of pipes and cables that twisted through the station's belly like metal intestines. Princess Nala had never been in such a cramped, dirty place in her entire royal life, but she kept up with June as they crawled, climbed, and squeezed through spaces barely wide enough for a human. "Where are we going?" she whispered as they paused. "At a junction where 5 tunnels met." "I have no idea," June admitted, checking his small handheld map. "But they're behind us, so anywhere else is better." The sound of boots on metal echoed through the tunnels, getting closer. Their pursuers had split up and were coming from multiple directions. "Can you fight?" June asked the princess. "I had royal combat training," she said, "but that was mostly ceremonial swordwork and formal dueling, not hiding in tunnels like a space rat." "Well, I had no combat training at all," June said with a nervous laugh. "So we're both learning as we go." They crawled through a particularly narrow section that led to the station's water recycling plant. The air here was humid and filled with the sound of rushing liquid. Huge pipes carried water and waste between different levels of the station. Up there, Princess Nala pointed to a maintenance walkway that crossed above the main treatment tanks. "We can see where they're coming from." They climbed a ladder that was slippery with condensation. June's hands were shaking, but he tried to stay calm. Back on Earth, the most dangerous thing he had ever faced was a difficult exam or a challenging presentation. Now he was running for his life through an alien space station with a princess whose people's enemies wanted them both dead. "June," Princess Nala said as they reached the walkway. "Why are you doing this?" "What do you mean?" "You could have gone back to Earth after saving my life. Your government probably would have transferred you somewhere safe, but you stayed to help me fight this conspiracy." "Why?" June thought about it as they moved carefully along the narrow walkway. Below them, recycled water rushed through transparent tubes like liquid lightning. "Back on Earth, we have a saying," he said finally. "If you see something wrong and you don't try to fix it, then you're part of the problem. What these elder species are doing isn't just wrong for you and me, it's wrong for everyone. Even if it gets you killed." "My grandfather fought in a war before I was born. He always told me that some things are worth fighting for, even if the fight is scary." June helped her step over a gap in the walkway. Freedom is one of those things. The right to help people is one of those things. A laser blast suddenly scorched the metal beside June's head. The assassins had found them. "Run!" he yelled. But Princess Nala didn't run. Instead, she did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She picked up a piece of broken pipe and threw it with perfect accuracy at the nearest assassin's weapon, knocking it from his hands. "Royal combat training," she explained to June's amazed expression. "Turns out it's more useful than I thought." They ran together through the maze of walkways and pipes, two unlikely partners fighting not just for their lives, but for the chance to change a galaxy. The Grand Assembly Hall had never been so packed. Word had spread through the station that Ambassador June and Princess Nala were going to make some kind of shocking announcement. Delegates from every corner of the galaxy filled the floating seats, their excited chatter creating a symphony of alien languages. June stood at the center podium, his hands trembling slightly as he held the datapad containing their evidence. Princess Nala stood beside him, no longer hiding behind royal protocol. For the first time in galactic history, a human and an alien royal were presenting a case together as equals. "Honored delegates," June began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers. 3 days ago, you wanted to imprison me for saving Princess Nala's life. Today I'm here to tell you why someone wanted her dead in the first place." The holographic displays around the chamber lit up with financial records, communication logs, and security footage. Gasps and shocked whispers rippled through the crowd as the evidence appeared before their eyes. "The attack on Princess Nala wasn't random," June continued. "It was planned by the Elder Coalition to stop her law reforms. They used your own sacred traditions as weapons, counting on the fact that ancient protocols would prevent anyone from helping her." Chief Justice Corval's silver branches rustled with what might have been anger or fear. "These are serious accusations, Ambassador. Do you have proof?" Princess Nala stepped forward. "We have more than proof. We have—" The lights suddenly went out. Emergency lighting bathed the chamber in red as confused shouts erupted from the floating seats. Through the chaos, June heard the distinctive hum of energy weapons powering up. "Get down!" shouted a familiar voice. Captain Juan of the Royal Guard leaped from his position near the princess's usual seat, tackling both June and Princess Nala to the floor just as laser blasts sizzled through the air where they had been standing. Dark figures were rappelling down from the chamber's upper levels, their faces hidden behind masks. These weren't the clumsy assassins from the tunnels. These were professionals, and they had come prepared for a war. "Protect the evidence!" Princess Nala yelled to Captain Juan as more energy blasts lit up the chamber. Captain Juan was unlike any warrior June had ever imagined. The purple-skinned guard moved like liquid lightning, his energy shield deflecting attacks while he returned fire with surgical precision. His glowing eyes tracked multiple targets at once, and his centuries of training showed in every movement. "Stay behind me," he ordered June and the princess. "And keep talking, the delegates need to hear this." June grabbed a portable speaker that had fallen from the podium. Even with laser fire echoing around them, his voice carried through the chamber. "The Elder Coalition hired these assassins. They're willing to kill anyone who threatens their power." Some of the delegates were screaming and trying to escape, but others were watching in fascination. They had never seen anything like this. Violence in the Grand Assembly was supposed to be impossible. Princess Nala stood up despite the danger, her royal training taking over. "Look around you," she called to the crowd. "This is what happens when we let fear and tradition control us instead of justice and progress." One of the assassins threw something that looked like a grenade. Captain Juan caught it in midair and hurled it back, where it exploded harmlessly against the crystal ceiling. "The money trail leads directly to Elder Coalition accounts," June shouted, pointing at the holographic displays that still showed their evidence. "They paid for weapons, bribes, and mercenaries, all to preserve laws that keep them in power." A laser blast grazed June's shoulder, spinning him around. Princess Nala caught him before he fell, and for a moment their eyes met. In that instant, surrounded by chaos and gunfire, they both realized something important. They weren't just fighting for their lives anymore. They were fighting for every being in the galaxy who had ever been told that ancient rules mattered more than doing what was right. The revolution had begun. The silence after the battle was almost louder than the fighting had been. Smoke drifted through the Grand Assembly Hall, while security teams led away the captured assassins in energy restraints. Several delegates sat in shocked quiet, staring at the evidence that still glowed on the holographic displays around them. June pressed a medical patch against his wounded shoulder, wincing as the alien technology worked to heal the laser burn. Princess Nala stood beside him, her white robes torn and stained, but her head held high like the royal she was born to be. Chief Justice Corville's silver branches creaked as he slowly descended from his floating seat to the main floor. His ancient eyes looked tired, like someone who had just watched his entire world change in the span of 20 minutes. "The evidence is overwhelming," he said finally, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The Elder Coalition's crimes against galactic law are beyond dispute." A murmur went through the remaining delegates. Some of the accused elder species had already fled the station, but others sat in their floating seats, looking defeated and ashamed. Princess Nala stepped forward. "Every inch the royal leader, despite her damaged appearance. Honored delegates, what we've seen today proves that our ancient systems are broken. Laws meant to protect us have been twisted into weapons. Traditions meant to bring peace have been used to enable murder." "What do you propose we do?" asked a delegate whose species looked like walking flowers. Her voice was small and uncertain. "We change," Princess Nala said simply. "We build something better." She turned to look at June, and he saw something in her glowing eyes that took his breath away. It wasn't just friendship or gratitude. It was respect between equals. "I formally invoke the right of alliance," Princess Nala announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "An ancient law older than the sacred touch protocols, older than the species separation codes. I request that the human species be granted full partnership status with the Crystal Dominion." The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. The right of alliance hadn't been used in over 4,000 years. It was a law from the very beginning of galactic civilization, when species formed partnerships based on mutual respect rather than political convenience. Ambassador Hana, who had been quietly watching from the human section, stood up with tears in her eyes. "On behalf of Earth and humanity, we accept this honor." Chief Justice Corville looked confused. "Princess, this is highly irregular. Humans are a new species with no significant resources or technology to offer. What could they possibly bring to such an alliance?" Princess Nala smiled, and for the first time since June had met her, she looked truly happy. "They bring something we've forgotten how to give each other. They bring the courage to do what's right even when it's dangerous. They bring the willingness to help strangers even when ancient laws say they shouldn't." She gestured to June. "This human saved my life when no one else would. He risked everything to expose a conspiracy that threatened the entire galactic government. He didn't do it for money or power or political advantage. He did it because it was the right thing to do." June felt his face getting red as hundreds of alien eyes focused on him. "I just did what anyone should have done." "Exactly," Princess Nala said, "and that's why everything needs to change." Over the following months, the partnership between humans and the Crystal Dominion became the foundation for what historians would later call the Great Reform. Species that had been separated by ancient prejudices began working together. Laws that had protected the powerful at the expense of the weak were rewritten. The Sacred Touch laws were the first to go, replaced by the Universal Aid Protocols that required anyone capable of helping in an emergency to do so, regardless of species or tradition. It wasn't easy. Change never is. There were protests, political fights, and even a few small conflicts as old power structures crumbled. But slowly, one broken protocol at a time, the galaxy became a place where doing the right thing mattered more than following ancient rules. And it all started with one human who couldn't stand to watch someone die while everyone else stood frozen. By fear. Sometimes the greatest courage comes from those who don't know they're supposed to be afraid.